Hello, welcome back to my channel. So today I wanted to sit down and film a little bit more of a casual discussion type video, not focusing on any particular book or tag or anything like that. What I wanted to talk about is something that's sort of been going around in my head over the last couple of days, which has been sort of a re-examination of my reading philosophy, really sort of rethinking some of the ways that I approach my reading or have been approaching my reading in specifically the last year or so. And what I mean by that is I came to the realization that I have been really focused on the analytic side of my reading. I've been really focused on the number of books that I read or the number of pages that I read, and less focused on the ultimate goal of coming away with a better, sounder understanding of the topics covered in the book. And I know that there's nothing wrong with focusing more on the analytic side of focusing on on keeping yourself motivated by goals for reading. I think that's really healthy and helpful to keep yourself motivated, keep yourself moving forward. But I realized that I was getting sort of sidetracked and distracted by the number of books I was reading and not by trying to have the best experience while reading that book. And this sort of started coming to me earlier this week. I have a new job, which is absolutely fantastic, but it means that I have less time now for reading. And so I have been reanalyzing and reevaluating my personal reading schedule, kind of cutting it up and fitting it into my day in new places where I didn't necessarily have it before. I'm trying to make sure that I can fit everything into my day that I want. And it occurred to me that the way I had been reading was so focused on just finishing the book, of starting a book, and really the main recurring thought in my mind was how many days until I finish this book, or how many hours until I finish this book. And again, I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but but for me personally, I wasn't focusing on the content of the book as much. I still was, of course, I still was reading it, I still was learning from it, I was still, talking about that book, but not to the extent that I was thinking about things like completing the book and checking the book off on my list of read titles for this year. And so I'm trying to sort of put myself into a philosophical shift in my reading and pivot back to allowing myself to spend more time in a single book, reading less books, but spending more time in them, and sort of letting my brain learn that that is still valuable. I think one of the reasons that this happened for me, at least, of sort of realizing that I was getting more stuck in sort of the race of reading, the race to completing a book, really came from wanting to have lots of books to talk about in my booktube videos, because of course videos here on booktube are all about what we're reading, right? We do wrap-up videos, and we do weekly read videos, and we do Friday reads, and we talk about all the books that we're reading. And so I wanted to have all of these books on my read list so that I could pull them out in my videos and talk about them, and have an impressive stack of books in my videos to show, and hey, look at these 8 books that I read this week. And I was getting so caught up in wanting to have that sort of material to use that I was, I think, robbing myself just a little bit of the actual experience of slowing down, and instead of focusing on having a certain number of books for the end of the week, I was focusing, instead of focusing on the number of books to have for the end of the week, instead focusing on what the books themselves mean and what information they hold and what I can learn from them while I was reading them. And so I'm trying to let myself shift away from the thought that there is sort of this perfect number of books that you have to read in order to be considered a reader, or there is a certain quantity of books you have to read every year or every month, and instead let myself sort of step back and reevaluate what reading needs to be for me to get the most out of it. And I think that probably where it will end up is sort of a happy middle between reading books quickly sometimes and reading other books more slowly and digesting them and allowing time to pass for that information to settle in and to be really, weaved into my knowledge base. And so, for instance, this all sort of started when I was reading Caught in Revolution by Helen Rappaport, which I'm still reading. Helen Rappaport is one of my favorite historical authors, particularly for Russian history, which is primarily the subject that she writes about. And so this book is just a little bit under 400 pages, which is a similar length to Rappaport's other works of Russian history. And for this one, I have really slowed down, partially because of training and starting a new job, but also just because I'm trying out this new philosophy of sort of making myself slow down and focus more on the content of the book and less on the race to finish it. And what I have realized is that I am able to process a lot more. And obviously I still processed in the past, reading quicker, but I've realized that by slowing down, at least for me, I think that it unlocks another level of concentration, another level of sort of being able to process all of the knowledge and retain all of the information that's in the book, versus sort of just speeding through it and then feeling like I just have sort of bits and pieces of information after reading something. The way that my brain works the best is sort of getting all of the smaller bits of information of a topic, and then over time those become connected. And so I think that by really plowing through a book and pushing through a book really, really quickly, I have sort of robbed myself of those small bits of more detailed information that then build up my web of knowledge on the subject, if that makes sense. And so by letting myself slow down, I am able to pick up on those smaller bits of information. And then by the end of the book, that knowledge web is sort of already meshed in my mind and cemented. And I come out with a much more well-rounded picture of the subject that I was just reading about. And so I'm trying to let myself learn to not hold myself to a numerical reading standard. I'm trying to retrain my brain to not have to not have to hold myself to saying that I have to read 150 books a year, or I have to read 200 books a year to call myself a reader, or to be an impressive reader, or to be a well-read reader, and instead let myself sort of off the hook a little bit and try to focus more on what am I getting out of the books that I'm reading, and what am I getting out of my time spent reading, because time spent reading is incredibly valuable. It's incredibly valuable to all of us, and you can't get your reading time back. The time you invest in a book, that is a permanent investment. And so I want to make sure that the time that I invest in what I read is worthwhile. And I want to make sure that the time I invest, I'm able to get out in some way at the end of however many hours I spend reading a book. And for me, what is valuable after reading a book is the ability to sit down and talk about it, and to connect what I read to a previous book that I read, or down the road when I'm reading something, connecting the dots between a book that I read 3 years ago and whatever I am currently reading, and to be able to build sort of that knowledge base. I do have that now. I still do have retention from books that I read 2 years ago or 3 years ago, but not to the point that I would really like it to be at. I would really like to have a much better grasp on books once I finish reading them. And I really think that that just comes down to, I have to force myself, at least at this stage, to let myself off the hook of feeling that there is a expectation that I have to try to fulfill. And instead of trying to fulfill this unknown expectation, let myself sort of be cut loose and be free to take as much time as I need to read a book. If I spend 8 days reading a book, or if I spend 1.5 days reading a book, at the end, in both cases, I have read the book. And I think that for me, I want to make sure that I am getting the knowledge out of the books that I want to get out, instead of sort of racing through to then be able to just check it off on a list. Because I have lots of books checked off, but if I'm not, remembering any of the topics discussed in any of those books, what was the point of reading them in the first place? And sort of by slowing down and going a little slower through the books, I think it helps me to, or I think it will help me to sort of process what is going on a deeper level, instead of sort of reading it quickly and then maybe going back and finding the bits that you missed, or rereading it and realizing that, I didn't fully understand, a section of the book. And for me, I found that this sort of need to slow down and process really comes with nonfiction specifically. With novels, I think it still does help. For instance, with Emma, this is a novel, I'm reading this with Anne Novella for the month of November, and we've been going at a really nice steady pace, and it has been absolutely delightful pulling back a little bit and really enjoying the material. But what I was going to say is, I feel that with fiction, reading it quickly or reading it slowly, the way it's presented, for me at least, I'm able to sort of grasp it either way. With nonfiction, I find that when I go really quickly, I'm skipping a piece of information. With fiction, you can miss a lot of things. You can miss dialogue, you can miss scenes. But I feel that when I'm reading fiction, if I missed a line of dialogue, I sort of realize that I've missed a line of dialogue, because the next line of dialogue doesn't make any sense. So I go back and I catch myself on that. Whereas with nonfiction, if I'm reading through a book on a topic that I'm not familiar with, I may not know that I just missed a crucial part of that story, because I've never read that story before. And so I get to the end, and then I have this gap in my knowledge, and I'm thinking back to the book, and I'm thinking about a particular historic event it was discussing, and I'm trying to relay the event in my mind. And there's one name I can't recall, or there's one location that I can't recall, and then I go back to the book and I realize, oh, it's because I missed like 4 lines, because I was tracing with a pen or a pencil or something, racing to get to the end of the book, instead of sitting back and allowing myself to sort of go slower and relax and take my time. Which is something that I'm trying to do. And this week, especially with starting into a new job, having a new schedule, I have a sort of a clean slate for my reading time. And a new goal moving forward, what I want to have happen in my reading, is to be able to slow down a little bit and try to refocus on for me, the essence of what I want reading to be, which is a way to learn, and a way to experience new things, and a way to walk in someone else's footsteps, and try to move away from feeling that I have to read a certain amount of books, or I have to read a certain amount of pages every day or every week to sort of keep up with this imaginary made up rat race that I have in my own mind, that's of my own creation, and instead let myself take the time that the book requires. Some books take longer than others to read, and not every book needs to be read at the same speed, and there are certain books that do require quite a lot of brain power, and there are other books that you can really be more on autopilot and just read read through quickly, and both are valuable and both are valid. And I think I just need to reset my reading preferences, as it were, to adapt freshly at the start of each book, to see what book it is, and then set my reading appropriately, and not feel bad if I'm spending more than a week in a book, or if I'm spending more than 2 weeks in a book even, and sort of let myself off the hook a little bit to enjoy the process of reading, and sort of the ability to really just live with a book. I haven't lived with a book in a while, because I've been very caught up in trying to just read as many as I possibly can. That if I'm spending more than just a couple days with the book, I'm feeling like I need to pick up the pace, because there are other books in that list that are waiting for me, instead of slowing down and realizing that the books that are waiting for me will still be waiting for me in a week, or in 2 weeks, or in 3 weeks, that they're not going to go anywhere. They will stay there. They will wait for me. There will be time to read them. And so those are just a couple of things that I am sort of trying to work through and to shift my philosophy on. And I'm going to see, how it works, just slowing down a little bit, taking more time in each book, really trying to fully savor everything that I'm reading, and try to realign my reading expectations with quality over quantity, which is something that I've always said that I value, is quality over quantity. But then I sort of catch myself in these moments of thinking, oh, I gotta get this book finished here, because I've been spending 3 days in it, and I gotta get it done so I can start the next one. And I want to work on catching myself in those moments, and rephrasing the statements that I tell myself, of, instead of, oh, you've spent 3 days in this book and you're not done yet, you got to finish it, is you spent 3 days, but look at all the stuff that you've learned, look at all the information that you have now that you didn't have before, or the experiences that you have had through reading this that you didn't have before. And through that, sort of increasing the final takeaway from the book, by sort of allowing myself to steep in it just a little bit longer maybe, and allowing my time in the book to be to be part of the experience, and not just trying to get to the end so I can say I've read it. Saying you've read something, saying I've read something is fine, but that's not the same as being able to sit down with someone and talk about it with them, and explain it to them, and sort of being able to live with the book, which is really what I want from my reading. I really want to be able to look back at all of the books that I have read, and be able to, recount everything about them, and how they affected me, and sort of how they have changed for me through my experiences with them. And I think in order for me to achieve that goal, really one of my main reading goals, I need to slow down a little bit, and force myself to reevaluate the philosophy of how I read and why. And that is all I have for today. I just wanted to sit down and sort of try to process through filming of a couple of the things that have been going through my head. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any comments that you would like to leave down below, please feel free to do so, and I will see you in the next video. Bye for now, and happy reading.